We appreciate your purchase and wanted to do something different to help you have a better garden. All seed packs basically say the same thing, something like this. In well-prepared soil, plant your seeds a quarter-inch deep after the danger of frost has passed. The only thing that really varies is the distance between seeds, maybe a little bit in the depth of planting, the distance between rows, and maybe they give you a vague map that tells you when to plant your seeds. This video does more than that. I'm going to give you about a 5-minute overview on planting and tending seeds in the garden so they germinate, grow, and get off to a great start. First, let me show you how to direct sow the seeds in the ground or a container using the flat to my right. And then I'm going to go over in more detail all the different steps that you really need to follow to have a great garden this year. So it's really more than just putting a seed in the ground and letting it go. I want to show you how to take care of the seeds so you have a great gardening experience. Carrots and radishes are cool weather crops. They can take a frost. They can be planted in the spring and fall. Here's an example of what carrots look like. You can sort of anticipate what your seedlings will look like about 2 to 3 weeks after germination. And this is an example of radishes. They both like a cooler temperature. Seeds are best planted when the soil temperature is about 50 degrees. Carrots do a little bit better when the temperature is 50 to 60 degrees soil-wise. Radishes can germinate in soil 40 to 50 degrees. Radish seeds can germinate in as little as 7 days based on conditions, while carrots can take anywhere from 14 to 21 days to germinate. So be a little bit more patient with your carrots. Radish seeds, you're going to go about a quarter-inch deep every 2 inches or so, and you can make the row as long as you wish. And just remember, if you put down 100 radish seeds at once, they're all going to mature at the same time. So a great way to grow radishes is to put down 25 to 50 seeds. After they germinate, wait 2 weeks, and then put it in another rotation of radish seeds. This way you're not harvesting them all at once. You can harvest them over a longer period of time. And that goes to be true for carrots also. 1 to 2 seeds per hole, again about a quarter-inch deep. You can thin to one plant if they both come up. And that's pretty much what I recommend for the 2-inch spacing. If you want to space them about 3 inches apart, you can leave both seeds in there. They will actually mature into a radish bulb and push each other to the side, and you'll be able to harvest both of them. Just harvest the largest one first. That gives more time for the smaller one to get larger come harvest time. Spacing in between, I would give them 6 to 8 inches between rows. That again allows a space for airflow, allows birds and other animals to get in there and really inspect your plants for slugs and snails, other insects which they will eat. So about a spacing of 6 to 8 inches between rows. And then just, of course, cover them over, water them in. If you're planting radishes in a container, you just want to stick with that 2-inch spacing all throughout the container. I know some of these come off screen a little bit. And you would just drop in 1 to 2 seeds, thin down to 1 if you plant 2. I do recommend just growing 1 seed per depression if you're growing in a container. And that's all you really need to do for your radishes. Carrots can take longer to germinate. Again, 50 degrees soil temperature is best. You want to loosen the soil 4 to 6 inches for your radishes and most crops. But if you're growing a longer variety of carrot that's going to get 6 or 8 inches in depth, well, in length, but go into the soil in depth, you really want to loosen your soil to a good 6 to 8 inches. This just allows the carrot root to develop without getting twisted and curled up. I plant carrot seeds pretty much like the radish seeds. Maybe a quarter-inch depression going all the way across. And then I put 2 seeds per hole. Carrot seeds do take longer to germinate, and I do thin these down to 1 plant after they're germinated and maybe a ½ inch to 1 inch tall. Once you have them planted, again, just lightly cover them, water them in. You can make your rows as long as you want, 6 to 8 inches between rows, and again, carrots are best planted in succession. That means maybe plant 25 to 50 carrots in 1 row or a couple of rows, and then after they germinate, 2 weeks later, plant another row or 2 of the carrots. And remember, your carrots are going to take up to 21 days to germinate based on temperature. So just be very patient with them. If you're planting them in a container, the container should be at least 8 inches in depth, loose soil, and you again would just go ahead and do 2 inches, and you would just drop your carrots in like that, cover them over, water them in. If you want to watch the rest of the video, I give you more information on watering your seeds and your transplants, and I also give you other tips to help you in your vegetable garden. Using the seed flat to my right, I pretty much showed you how to plant seeds in the ground or in containers. It's really not a lot of information that you find on the back of a seed pack. Pretty much it's loosen the soil 4 to 6 inches deep, mix in some compost, plant the seeds to this depth with this spacing after the danger of frost has passed. If that's all you need, thank you so much for your purchase, and please check out my YouTube channel, The Rusted Garden, for more in-depth videos on vegetable gardening. If you want to stick around for about 5 more minutes, I want to go over the information that I would have found most valuable when I first started vegetable gardening. I want to talk about frost dates and soil temperatures, basic watering and fertilizing, and basic information on starting your seeds indoors. You may want to start some seeds indoors, grow transplants, and get them out into the ground. I think this information will help you be extremely successful in your vegetable garden. Frost dates are really important because they really tell you when you can start your garden. Cool weather crops love the cooler weather. They can take a frost. Your warm weather crops cannot take a frost. They're tender, so if a frost comes, it's going to kill them off. And if you're lucky enough, you can grow the cool weather crops again in the fall. So the first thing you have to do is figure out when your last frost date is and when your first frost date is. And you simply put in where you're at, followed by the words last frost date, or where you're at, followed by the words first frost date. And you're going to get that, in an internet search, and it'll give you your average date of when those temperatures show up in your area. Once you have those dates, you can start planting your cool weather crops before the frost is completely gone, because it can take the frost. You want to plant your warm weather crops well after the frost date so they're not damaged. And then in the fall, you can start your cool weather crops while it's still warm, but they can grow into that first frost date. They can take a frost. So the frost dates are really going to give you an idea of how to plant your garden. So I know it gets confusing. So the short version is cool crops in the spring when frost is still around, warm crops later spring and summer when frost is gone, and then you can plant the cool crops again in the fall when the frost is returning. So now let's talk about soil temperature and how that affects your cool crops and your warm crops. Soil temperature can be confusing, but it's really important. And we're just talking about the top 4 inches of the soil. That's where you're going to plant your seeds, and you want the right soil temperature so that your seeds are germinating in anywhere from 5, to 10 days. If you put seeds into the ground when it's too cold, when they're put in the ground at a temperature they don't like, they're going to sit there. And if they're sitting there 2 weeks or 3 weeks, there's a greater risk for them to get a mold or a fungus, or to basically just rot and die. So timing is really, really important. Your cool weather crops like soil temperature that's 40 or 50 degrees. Your warm weather crops like soil temperature that's in the upper 60s, 70 degrees. How do you figure that out? Again, you don't have to go measure the soil temperature, and there's no place to look it up online. You're just looking for the nights to start warming up. So early spring, later winter, when the temperatures at night are getting into the 40 or 50 degrees, you're getting 50, 60 degree days with some rain. That's what's going to warm up the soil to that 40, 50 degrees Fahrenheit for your cool weather crop seeds. Same thing for the warm weather crops. As you get into spring or later spring, when the nights are getting into the 50s and 60 degrees, the day temperatures are getting into the 70s, you're getting warmer rains. That top 4 inches is going to get up to 60, 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Perfect time to plant your warm weather crop seeds. And you can just look at a historical weather map and just see, when the nights are beginning to warm up and the days are beginning to warm up. Now, why is this important? If you put a pea seed, for instance, into the ground when the soil temperature is in the upper 30s or 40s, the pea seed may sit there. It's not going to germinate. They're really susceptible to fungus and molds, and they're going to die off. If you put a warm weather crop like tomato or pepper seeds into the ground when the ground temperature is 40 or 50 degrees, those seeds are just going to sit there. So you're not really getting a jump on the season, and you're not really saving any time. They may sit there 3 weeks or 4 weeks until the soil temperature gets into the 60s and 70s, and then they're going to germinate. So there's no rush to get your seeds out and into the ground. You want to get them out there when the soil temperature is right for the cool weather crops or the warm weather crops. Please check out the video description for more detailed information on the topics that I'm talking about. Watering and fertilizing covers an entire year in the garden, but I just want to focus on what do you need to do at the beginning when you're putting the seeds into the ground. If you have compost, you want to put down 1 to 2 inches of compost across your bed and work it into the top 4 to 6 inches of the soil. You want that top 6 inches to 12 inches to be loose, especially if you're growing carrots or other root crops. You can also purchase organic granular fertilizer. It comes in pelleted form, and you would just follow the instructions, cover the growing area, and mix that into the surface. That will set up your bed. What I recommend is a water-soluble fertilizer. That's a fertilizer you mix in with water, and then you just water in the plant as it's growing over time. Water-soluble fertilizer is fertilizer, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that's immediately ready to the plant. So let's go back to the seed planting. Once the seeds are planted, as directed earlier in this video, just gently water it in with a watering can or a gentle spray nozzle. Soak the top 2 to 4 inches of the soil. You really want the moisture in there when you put the seeds in the ground. Water will be absorbed by the seeds. That triggers the whole process for germination. And then you're probably going to want to water that planting area, your containers, every 2 to 3 days. If it's cooler, less often. If it's warmer, a little bit more often. But it's really important that you just manage the water well for the first really 2 weeks after you put the seeds in the ground. You want to make sure they get what they need with respect to water, germinate, set up the root system, and then sprout or germinate. Seeds will live off of the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that are already in the ground when they germinate, and they also live off the seed coat. So about 2 weeks after germination, you can mix any water-soluble fertilizer into your gallon watering can and just give your plants a drink. After that, about once a month, give them some water-soluble fertilizer, and that will keep your seed starch growing well, and that will help establish wonderful plants for the rest of the season. And again, just to review, water your newly planted seeds every 2 to 3 days based on temperature, and then after they germinate, water your seedlings in about 2 weeks with the water-soluble fertilizer, and then once a month thereafter. Thanks so much for your seed purchase. The biggest reason people start plants indoors is because they have a shorter growing season and they're trying to get the plants to grow 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, even 10 weeks indoors. So they put a more mature plant outdoors, and therefore the plant matures more quickly and they get a harvest sooner. The biggest issue with starting plants indoors is you have to make sure you start them in large containers so their root systems don't get root bound and coil in the container. And you want to make sure that that transplant is being planted into soil that has the right temperature for the plant. Just because you put a bigger plant out early doesn't mean you're going to get a bigger plant sooner if the soil conditions are wrong. So cool weather crops like to go into soil that's 40, 50 degrees. The warm weather crops like to go into soil that's 60, 70 degrees. So you do have to start indoors with a plan that in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, they're going to be put out into the ground when the soil temperatures are correct. Thanks so much for purchasing the seeds. I hope this video gives you more information to help you be successful in the garden. Starting seeds isn't difficult, but there are a lot of nuances, and I just wanted to cover them in a little bit more detail than saying put the seeds in the ground 1/4 inch deep, 6 inches apart. Please check out the video description for more details on all the different things we talked about. I hope you have a wonderful gardening season, and please subscribe. My name is Gary Plarchuk. I am the content creator of The Rusted Garden, and I have over 1,500 garden videos waiting on YouTube to help you out.